Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. As you can see, the sun is glaring right now, so it's kind of basically glaring around my face. So it's pretty sunny out right now. So I'm returning to you for this Buckcherry Roar Like Thunder album review this afternoon for you guys, or late afternoon. So I'm going to discuss what I listened to for the 10 tracks on this 31.5-minute album and let you know my thoughts on Buckcherry's 11th studio album, Roar Like Thunder. So let's dive into this album review now. It starts with the title track, Roar Like Thunder, which is a pretty solid track for sure. I think Josh Todd's vocals sound pretty solid for the most part. And overall, it's a strong track with the drumming and guitar work. So it's a strong 5 out of 5. It was, I believe, a single for this record's announcement or something. But overall, it's pretty good in its own way. It did pretty well, so 4.75 out of 5 for this track. When the Sun Goes Down is a pretty good one. It's very short. It's only like 2 minutes and 16 seconds, but you're in for a quick track with this one, so I do dig this one. 4.75 out of 5 for this one, too. Come On is a pretty good one for how it sounds, the third track on the record. And Josh Todd's vocals in this sound pretty good for the most part, and the chorus is pretty catchy and definitely is a good rock track to get into. So 4.75 out of 5. Talking about sex is a very explicit song, but it's still pretty strong for how it is. I think Josh Todd's vocals work for this track, and drumming and guitar wise, it's pretty swift of a song. You're in for a basic rock track that you can really jam out to in a little bit, and it is a filthy track, but in its own way, it's good. So 4.75 out of 5. Blackout is a good song in its own way. Not one of my favorites, but one of the least favorites, but still good for how it sounds. Overall, execution-wise, it performed alright for the most part with Josh Todd's vocal performance and just the way the track was sounding overall. With the verses and the chorus, I think the chorus was kind of hit or miss with me, but the verses were pretty strong for the most part. The chorus was a little bit of a tad bit of a least favorite moment in the chorus was just how it was sounding overall, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just losing my train of thought, sorry. But overall, 4.5 out of 5. I Go Boom is a pretty good song in its own way. I do dig this one for how it sounds execution-wise, and just overall with the drum work and guitar work. This track did pretty well for the most part. So, I think Josh Todd's singing vocals are pretty strong in this. The guitar work and drum work is still great in this track, and definitely executed pretty well. 4.75 out of 5. I almost said 5 out of 5. Most of these songs are pretty good in their own way, but there are a few critiques I have with this record. But overall, 4.75 out of 5 for I Go Boom. Set It Free is a pretty strong track for how it sounds. I really enjoy how this track's sounding overall, and execution-wise, this did pretty good for the most part. I was making sure the song was called Set It Free. I thought it was called Set Me Free, but no, it wasn't. It's called Set It Free, but it's still very strong for how it sounds, and execution-wise, I think Josh Todd's vocals did pretty well, and the guitar work and drum work was pretty strong. So 4.75 out of 5. Hello, Goodbye kind of gets a little repetitious when it gets to the chorus, but it's not terrible in any way per se. But I just think there's some execution flaws with this track that I had a few critiques about. But it's overall a good track in its own way. 4.5 out of 5. The drumming and guitar work is fairly solid in this track, and just the way Josh Todd is singing it is pretty strong in its own way. Machine Gun was probably a favorite of mine, a pretty good song in its own way. I think Josh Todd was singing this pretty swiftly and doing pretty well with his vocals. and just overall the drum work and guitar work did pretty well for the most part. So 4.75 out of 5 for Machine Gun. And finally, the closing track, Let It Burn, is a 2-minute and 46-second track, which does end the record pretty quickly, but for the most part, it's a strong track in its own way. So another 4.75 out of 5 for this one. It ends pretty well. There's a few critiques I have with it, but not to the extent where I hated this track. So, yeah, good Swift song to end the record, and definitely a good rock track to jam out to in its own way. So overall, 4.75 out of 5. Overall, production, mixing, and execution-wise, I think Buckcherry's Roar Like Thunder album was actually a good record, surprisingly. I was actually impressed with this record. It's not going to be on my best albums of 2025 by the end of the year, but it will be on my decent to good albums of 2025. It'll be on that list, particularly. But overall, it's just majority of the tracks did pretty well. There's a few critiques I had with how the mixing is for this record. It's pretty swift, but it's just a basic good record. Buckcherry doesn't usually disappoint. A few albums, maybe, but I think in their earlier discography, they were starting off small and working their way up to having good solid hits. But overall, I think Buckcherry Roar Like Thunder is a good record. And if I were to give it a score, it's gonna get a good 8 out of 10. It's a good record. Definitely recommend you check this album out this upcoming Friday for June 13th. It was something interesting and was something that I can really get on board with. And honestly, this is probably the only band that hasn't really broken up. Well, except for Hinder. I mean, Hinder and Buckcherry were kind of like one of the most popular bands in 2008. Then Hinder kind of went their own way, and so did Buckcherry. But basically, Buckcherry's pretty much been a good band for the most part. I really enjoyed Josh Todd's singing and how the songs sound in this record. And mostly through the past records like Warpaint, Hellbound, Volume 10, and this one have been their strongest for the most part. So overall, 8 out of 10 for Buckcherry Roar Like Thunder. I hope you enjoyed this album review this late afternoon, and thank you guys for watching.